Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Alhamdulillahi rabbil alamin wassalatu wassalamu ala asyrafil anbiya wal mursalin wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. Alhamdulillah, so far we have finished our discussion and analysis on the Keynesian macroeconomics. So we have looked into so many things, describe so many situations, equilibrium from the Keynesian point of view. So today we're gonna look into another school in macroeconomics, which is the monetarist. So last week we have already started our discussion on the monetarist, but let's just do a few revisions before we move on to the next topic. So firstly, I would like to highlight the four propositions put forward by the monetarist. So firstly, what we have discussed last week, the monetarists, they believe that money supply have a dominant effect on the nominal income, so they will move in the same direction. So number two, they believe that in the short run, a change in money supply will have a direct impact on real variables. So basically, whenever the central bank increase money supply, real output and the other real variables in the aggregate demand will go up. However, in the long run, a change in money supply will only have impact on nominal variables. So if money supply keeps on increasing in the long run, it will only increase prices, but not the real variables. And number four, finally, in opposite to the Keynesian view, the monetarists believe that private sector is actually stable. So we have actually discussed these two propositions in detail last week in our meeting. So what we're gonna do next, will be to move on to proposition number three. So we're gonna look at how the monetarists will be able to explain this link. But before we move on, I would just that seems that last week there were I noticed like some of you have quite a, I don't know, it's like a surprising phase or stuff, like, because it seems that we just started a new thing. So maybe it would be good if we do if you look back into 1 and 2. Just briefly. To start our brief review of proposition number 1 and 2, so I would like to bring you back to the basic of the arguments between the monetarists and the Keynesian, and previously with the classical. So their arguments will basically reduce to how the impact of money on real variables from the QTM equation. So we know that from the QTM equation, M multiplied with 1/k, is equals to Py. So as you notice, this will be the money supply, the money variable, and this P multiplied with Y, price multiplied with real income, will give us the nominal income. So the differences, basically, just to simplify the discussion, is with regard to the behavior of K. So according to the classical previously, they believe that K is constant, is stable. So if you recall back from the Fisherian QTM, this K is just the reciprocal of velocity, or the turnover rate. How many times does a paper money change hands? The arguments between this different school of thought, between the classical, the Keynesian, and later on the monetarists, can be summarized into how they have a different way of explaining the behavior of K in this equation. So according to the classical, previously they believe that this K is constant. So if you recall back into the other version, the Fisherian QTM, so this is equivalent, this is just the reciprocal of V, the velocity. So the classical believe that the velocity of money is actually stable, is constant. However, Keynesian, they attack that view by saying that no, this is not stable because of the three motives of holding money, if you still remember. So motive number 3, causes this K to be variable, not constant, because it will be negatively affected by interest rate. How the speculative demand for money is negatively influenced by a change in interest rate, and Keynesian believe that investors, they are very sensitive to changes in interest rate. Okay, so remember that should have explain the slope of the LM curve. However, the monetarists, when they come back later, so they kind of try to defend the classical view. So what Friedman did, okay, Milton Friedman did, is that he based on his argument, so he expanded this K. So basically he tried to explain what are the factors that can affect K, and in the end, as a conclusion, he believed that all those impacts are relatively small. So we can somehow simply assume that this K can be assumed to be constant. So basically, the demand for money is not sensitive to changes in interest rate. And remember, how will then that translate into how will that affect the slope of the LM curve? So because that will then basically help us to compare the policy effectiveness, okay, between the Keynesian and the monetarist. Let's see how we can explain the first proposition put forward by the monetarist, which says that money supply has a dominant effect on nominal income. So firstly, we know that this from our discussion in the last class, if you still remember, that the monetarists, they expanded the money demand equation. So instead of recall back the QTM, the Fisherian, the Cambridge version. So this is similar to the Cambridge version of QTM. So what the monetarists did is that they expanded the thing that explained K. Remember, like basically the differences between the monetarists, the Keynesian, and the classical, it can be summarized kind of the differences, how K behave. So according to the monetarists, Friedman, he expanded K by looking at what are the possible factors that can affect K. So he expanded the interest rate. Instead of just looking at the interest rate from the bonds market, he also included the interest rate of on equities from holding stocks, shares of companies, as well as the expected return from holding durable goods like house. For example, if you expect that RD, the return from holding house, is high, so in that case, it might be better for you to hold a house instead of holding money. So instead of demanding money, you would like to demand a house. So in that case, as you demand house, you use the money to buy a house, so your demand for money will go down. So basically, all these three, the return or the interest rate, the expected return on these three assets will negatively affect money demand. And then we have the usual nominal income here, PY. So we're gonna look here, according to the monetarists. So how does the money demand equation behave? They believe that the money demand equation is stable. This is stable. This will not change a lot, basically, the demand for money. Now, to have equilibrium in the money market, we need to make sure that the demand for money equals to money supply. And you know that money supply is an exogenous, it is a policy variable, it is being determined by the central bank. The central bank simply decide, whatever amount that they want to print. Okay, so to have equilibrium, basically, money supply will have to equal to money demand. Since, according to monetarists, this equation, money demand is stable, so whenever there is a shock or something happening in the money market, most of the time, it is caused by money supply. Change in money supply is the one that basically causes all these disturbance. So since money demand is stable, so let's have a look what happens when money supply changes. So for example, let's say the central bank decided to print more money, increase money supply. So what will happen in the money market? Because now we know that there is a disturbance to the equilibrium. So there are actually three possible situations that may arise. In the first situation, whenever M goes up for the equilibrium to hold, the right hand side must change. Okay, this thing must change. So we kind of have two variables here, the K and the PY. So if M goes up, so we can have K goes up, but nominal income remains the same, no changes. So this is the first situation. Second situation, it might be that the nominal income increases, but K remains the same, K remains constant. While in the third situation, it might be that both of them go up together, maybe 50-50, 50% K goes up by 50%, another half goes to the nominal income, or 30-70, but whatever it is, both of them goes up. So now you should be able to see that in these three cases, in these three possible situations that we have looked at, in two cases, case number 2 and 3, nominal income change. So this shows that the change in money supply can influence nominal income. However, in the first case, we could see that there is also a possibility that, whenever money supply goes up, nominal income will not change, but actually will affect K. It will affect K. So this is why these three, with only this assumption, because it may lead to a situation where actually nominal income doesn't change. So this is why we attribute these cases, this assumption, with weak quantity theory of money. Because to support this proposition, number one, because it seems that by only imposing this assumption, only in two cases that we could see that a change in money supply will have a dominant impact on nominal income. But in the first case, it may not. Okay, so that's why we say we call this assumption as the weak quantity theory of money. So we need to add another assumption to enable us to really support this proposition.